welcome back to this week's episode of Outside the Arena. I'm Griffin Senek. Alongside me is my co-host Devin Bernstein, and it's been a few weeks, but we're back. A lot to talk about. We got the MLB playoffs kicking off in less than a week. The NFL, we're about to have week 4, and I mean, there's been a ton of injuries so far. We'll obviously get to that, but we're going to start today talking a little bit of baseball. Devin, your Phillies clinched the NL East just the other day. Most of the playoff spots, or at least the divisions, have been settled at this point. The Yankees probably will clinch either tonight or tomorrow the AL East. The Guardians, Astros have locked up their respective divisions, as well as the Phillies and Brewers. Dodgers and Padres are about to start a 3-game set that, or I think they're
I
playing,
think the
right?
Padres won game
They
one
won
last.
last night, right? Yeah. So they're in the middle of the 3-game set. So Dodgers could lock that division up with 2 more wins. Padres can make it interesting. The wild cards for both leagues are kind of a mess. You got the Tigers coming out of nowhere and leapfrogging the Twins. They have the same record as the Royals now. I mean, it is a wild time in the AL wild card and the NL wild card. You've got the D-backs, Braves, and Mets fighting for the final 2 spots, and a little bit of weather down in Atlanta causing some real big issues for the Mets and the Braves. But Dev, I'll start with you. I mean, obviously, this year, I think, the league is just wide open. Like, that's kind of what everyone's been saying. We're not going to have a 100-game winner. Obviously, your Phillies, I think, are as in a good of a spot. I was missing the word of in as good of a spot as possible. With that rotation, that lineup, and that bullpen now back ended with Carlos Estevez. But what are your kind of thoughts on how you see kind of the favorites, I guess, in each league respectively? Obviously, the AL, seemingly a lot weaker, I think, than the National League this year.
Yeah, I mean, starting with the NL, I mean, you have the obvious teams. The Dodgers and the Phillies have been, kind of the most consistent around the top of the NL for most of the year. Obviously the Dodgers just have an immense amount of talent at the top end of the lineup. The middle end of it has kind of filled out with Tommy Edman kind of randomly playing well, and Muncy getting back, and Will Smith will be playing every day in the playoffs, and that helps. So there's a little bit of concern of, maybe I guess the back end of the lineup, and they're maybe too dependent in some ways on their top 3, and the pitching staff isn't quite so deep. And do you have anyone in the bullpen that is a lock to, be a closer type? I mean, they've kind of thrown Michael Kopech in that role, who I believe they acquired at the trade deadline. So, they have some questions, but obviously they have the talent. Ohtani, obviously, I mean, what a game and what a season. He's just incredible, and it's funny because he's not even pitching right now, and he's still one of the most versatile players in the league. Yeah, and then with the Phillies, I mean, they went, through a really, really tough stretch, late July to August. Truly were one of the worst teams in the league for a 3-week stretch. And, obviously we've seen this with teams. We saw it with the Rangers last year. They had a similar thing where they started amazingly and then cooled down and got back up. And seems like the Phillies have, sort of figured a lot of stuff out. The top end of the rotation has gotten back into form, with the exception of Ranger Suarez, who's still struggling. And I think a big swing piece here for the Phillies depends on how he performs. Basically everyone in the lineup went cold at some point during that stretch, and for the most part everyone has rebounded. And then the injury bug kind of hit, and for the most part they've gotten healthy as well. Spencer Turnbull has been out for 2-3 months, and there's a chance that he could come back. And obviously they won't be starting a 5th guy in the playoffs, but between those large inning performances, maybe you're down 5-2 and you don't want to throw out all your quality arms, but you have the chance to stay in the game, and you need someone who can give you 2 or 3 innings of maybe 1-run baseball. That could be huge if he can get back in time. And like I said, this top end of the rotation, I mean, Wheeler and Nola have been lights out in the playoffs the last 2 years. Christopher Sanchez just playing amazing baseball right now. I think he has a ground ball rate near like 60% or something like that. He's having an awesome year. So, I mean, yeah, the Phillies have the pieces. They've been here before. The back end of this bullpen is awesome. Like you said, Estevez has been awesome, and Strom and Hoffman have kept it going all year. Kerkering is really on fire right now. He has amazing stuff out of the bullpen. And, even a Jose Alvarado, who struggled for a long time this year, has really figured it out. So, I mean, not to go on too long, but I do think this Phillies team has what it takes. I think the Dodgers have what it takes. You also look at the Brewers. They've a really scrappy team. I don't know if they quite have the high end lineup talent, to really compete, but anything can happen. They're really well managed. Doesn't seem like they have any major weaknesses. And then, it's you're hard pressed not to mention these wild card teams. I mean, the Padres have been one of, if
Yeah.
not the best teams in baseball. Is a loaded lineup. Top end of that starting rotation's really getting going. And you have some guys in the bullpen you can really trust. So really nothing about this Padres team that, makes you think they can't make a run. We saw the Diamondbacks do it last year. In some ways, I think they've gotten better. They're really cold right now, but at any given time, you can get the bats going again. And you still have the Braves and Mets fighting for those last two spots along with the Dodgers. Like we said, we don't really know exactly how that's going to play out. Apparently, as of right now, there would be a doubleheader on Monday before the wild card on Tuesday, which just
One of
seems
those
like
teams would have to fly to San Diego that night, and it's just crazy.
it's just crazy. And we'll see. Obviously can't do anything about a hurricane, but this game could be being played elsewhere right now, and that's obviously more frustrating for you as a Mets fan than it is for me, but it still just sucks overall. And truthfully, you don't want to count any of these teams out. The Mets have been awesome since really the start of June. If Lindor gets back, which I'm not exactly sure what the status
He
is
was in
there.
the lineup today if they were to have played. So,
Okay,
but
well,
I
that's a
mean,
good sign. I mean, he's been absolutely incredible. And this lineup has figured itself out. Iglesias, Acuna's brother, has really stepped up to the plate. I wonder, exactly what the lineup will look like once Lindor is back. But all these guys are playing well. Vientos a breakout year. The bullpen does, obviously scare you, but a couple of these arms have a great run. There's nothing even about the Mets, and you can say the same thing about the Braves if this lineup gets going because we know they have the pitching talent. So you really don't want to count anyone out in the NL. As for the AL, I mean, you have, the classic Astros. I mean, they started slow and just kept getting closer and closer. And now, they're locked into the 3 seed and mostly healthy if Alvarez can get back in time. So, obviously they're a team to watch. You have the Yankees who've obviously Soto and Judge and the rest of the lineup has, played better, good pitching staff as well. A little worried about the back end of the bullpen. And then to be honest, the rest of the AL, it's like, you got the Guardians. I mean, they certainly have some talent, but does it scream a World Series team? I'm not sure. Jose Ramirez having an awesome season. And then you look at the wild card teams, and it's like the Orioles have really, really faltered as of late. They're kind of, I think they barely just clinched a playoff spot last night. And then you have the Tigers, Royals, Twins, and Mariners fighting out for those last 2 spots. Like we said, we touched on the Twins are just on an absolute heater right now. Can't count, that type of
the
team out.
Tigers, not the Twins.
Tigers, apologize.
Twins
But
are
yeah,
on the
I
opposite of a heater at
exactly,
the
yeah.
moment.
But the Tigers, I mean, they sold at the deadline, Flaherty gone, and and it just hasn't mattered. They're really young. They kind of don't even know what they're up against right now. So, you don't want to count any of these teams out. Ultimately, I would probably guess it's the Astros or the Yankees out of the AL. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think the AL outside of the I mean, I'll be honest, like, and I'm not a Yankees. I'd consider myself a Yankees hater. Like if they don't go to the World Series this year, like, I mean, when's it gonna happen? Because like it is wide open for them. I mean, like you said, like the Baltimore Orioles have completely fallen off the face of the earth at this point. I mean, they put up a win last night against the Yankees, but this is a team that started really hot and they've just kind of collapsed. And Grayson Rodriguez has announced that he's out for the year today. Um, I think you got to look back to that trade deadline, and the moves they made were just mind-boggling. For now, it didn't even help them because the guy that they paid up for, Trevor Rogers, Eloy Jimenez, both have been optioned to AAA, and then they gave up a lot of high-quality prospects, specifically for Rogers. So, I mean, just really a really, really bad second half of the year all around for Baltimore. Yeah, Kansas City is another team that they're really kind of starting to struggle a little bit. And I think with them, it's also just kind of like regression to the mean. Like, I don't think they were as good as they were playing. Like, obviously, Bobby Witt is a star. Seth Lugo's had an incredible year. Cole Reagan's a great piece. Salvador Perez, all reliable. But, the struggles for them really do align with when their first baseman Vinny Pasquantino. I probably botched that.
You got it.
Mr. Italiano. When he went down, this is a guy who I don't know if he might have driven in 100 runs or he was awfully close. Like he was a key part of this lineup, and I just think I'm not really thinking about them. And then yeah, like the Twins, if they somehow sneak in, like they're going down in the wild card round, 100%. If not, the Yankees will take care of them. And then yeah, the Guardians, like I think it's just the same old story with them. Like we've seen them get beat by the Yankees or the Astros in the playoffs like so many years in a row now that, I just don't know if this year's team is any different. And in past years, they really had great starting pitching and, they've had some nice contributions, but I don't think you look at really anyone in that rotation and you're really scared by it. That said, the bullpen is excellent for Cleveland. Emmanuel Clase has been arguably the best all around pitcher in the game this season. So, if their starters can give them quality innings, Cleveland will be a very tough team to beat. It's just a matter of if they'll be able to do that against, some of these strong lineups like a Houston or a Yankees. If I had to predict AL, I would say the Yankees. I just don't think any of these teams are really on their level. I think Soto and Judge is just going to be a real problem in the playoffs. I think, for them, the pitching is the question mark. You had Nestor Cortez go on the IL today. Jake Cousins, a key reliever for them, also on the IL with a pec injury. So, that's not what they want, obviously, coming down to the wire here. That's a start the playoffs, but they'll have to figure it out, and it'll be interesting to see how the AL unfolds. And then the NL is it's going to be a gauntlet in the National League. I mean, it is whoever comes out of there, it's going to be a grind. I think, like you said, I think the Phillies are best positioned. But I mean, that almost makes me think they won't be the team to come out because the way we've seen the NL the last few years, it's been these teams that have been in the wild card that just really have gotten hot. The Phillies 2 years ago and then the Diamondbacks last year. But I mean, the Phillies have all the talent in the world. They've been playing good baseball. Obviously, just clinched the division. They had a lot of games with the Mets, which somehow the Mets went 4-3 in those 7 games. So maybe a preview ahead to what would be an awesome playoff series, in my opinion. But I think Philly's in a great spot, better than the Dodgers, because the Dodgers, at the end of the day, like who's going to take the ball every 5 days? Like you've got Yamamoto, you've got Jack Flaherty, and it's kind of a question mark with that starting rotation. Like you don't really know what you're going to get. Yamamoto and Flaherty are two guys who haven't really pitched in the major league playoffs that much. Yamamoto definitely hasn't. Jack Flaherty, I maybe with the Cardinals, probably with the Cardinals. You would imagine he would have
Not
made
not much, I don't think.
yeah, 1 or 2 starts maybe. So a lot of inexperience in that rotation. The bullpen, like you said, they kind of haven't really had a solidified back end guy. But I mean, top three in the order: Shohei, Mookie, Freeman. I mean, that is the scariest trio in the game. So you can't ever count those guys out. The Brewers, it's the classic Brewers year where maybe they win the wild card game, but I just don't see it with this team going to the World Series. I just don't think they're really playing that well right now to begin with, and the starting pitching is all right. It's just not as good as it was when they had a guy like a Corbin Burns headlining it and Brandon Woodruff healthy. So I don't know about the Brewers. I honestly think that out of any of the teams that make the playoffs, they would probably be my last pick. And then the wild card teams. I think the Padres, they might act. If I was to, my prediction for the World Series right now would be Padres Yankees. If I'm being honest, I think the Padres, they've got a great home field advantage. The lineup is really good. Obviously, you've got Machado, who's really turned his season around. Tatis, maybe not the guy he was the year before the suspension. I think he's still kind of trying to work his way back after the injuries and being away from the game for a year. I don't think we've seen a full season of how good Fernando Tatis can really be. Profar's had a great year. You've got, guys like Cronenworth who are pesky hitters, Jackson Morel's right up there in the rookie of the year conversations. And that bullpen, I think, is maybe the best in the game right now. I mean, you've got Robert Suarez and Tanner Scott at the back, Jason Adam, who they acquired at the trade deadline, Brian Hoig, really underrated piece from Miami that they got. So this is a really tough team to beat. Their starting pitching, like you said, is started to turn a corner. Cease has had a great year. Musgrove pitching the ball really well. Michael King has had a good year as well. So I think San Diego's in a great position. I think right now that they would actually be my
Darvish
favorite.
is back, right?
I think he's back too. Yeah. So exactly, like they just have all these names, ways to beat you, and then those final two wild card spots. I mean, it is for me. It's going to be. I'm happy I have 2 day vacation before the final 4 days of hell ensue. It's going to be hectic. The Mets, they've been basically the best team in baseball since the start of June. I mean, they've really played well. That pitching starting rotation, which was such a question mark, has really kind of solidified itself. I mean, Sean Manaea has been as good as anyone. It feels like these last 2-3 months. David Peterson's had a career year. Sevy, rough start last night, but he's had a solid year as well. Quintana hasn't allowed an earned run or he's allowed one earned run all month. The lineup is really good. I mean, Brandon Nimmo's starting to hit the ball a lot better, which I think is key. Lindor, obviously, if they can get him back and somewhat healthy. I mean, he said it. He's not going to be fully healthy the rest of the year, which, I mean, I don't think anyone is in the baseball season after 162 games. But you get Lindor back. If Pete Alonso could get going, I mean, you've got a lot of names in this lineup. Alvarez is really hitting the ball well, and Iglesias has been, I mean, the story, I think, in all of MLB, it feels like this season with the hit single, obviously, oh my God. And then, he's batting about 340, which is just bonkers with, all world defense in the middle, up the middle. So, you know, I think they could make a run. I don't know, obviously, as a biased fan, I'm going to say that. I don't know if the starting pitching can hold up truly, throughout a whole playoff push. I just don't know if those guys, they've had incredible seasons. Can they make those 4 to 5 big starts needed to get there? I don't know. And then Atlanta is kind of the reverse, where that rotation is just deadly. I mean, Sale, Fried, Schwellenbach. I mean, if they had Spencer Strider, I mean, holy moly, they would be set. And the lineup is turning a quarter. Michael Harris has started to hit the ball really well. Matt Olson is kind of recovered as well. I mean, he's 29 home runs on the season, having a down year, but it's still a decent year. Ozzy Albies is back, although he's only hitting from the right side of the plate. So, Atlanta, as another team that I don't think anyone wants to play in the playoffs just because of that pitching. And then Arizona, to me, is, I think they kind of had their run last year. Like, I just don't see it with this team. They were really hot post All-Star break, but they've kind of cooled down. And I don't know. I just don't think that this team really, if I were to say the two teams I feel least confident about and out of these teams in the race, I would say the Brewers and the Diamondbacks. So that's my thoughts. I think Padres, Philly, not Padres, Phillies, Padres, Yankees would be my World Series prediction right now. I think the Padres win it all. That's my prediction. So, yeah. Anything else, or do you want to move on to the NFL?
I guess just quickly, I'll give a prediction. I will go with the Phillies, and I do think the Astros are gonna pesky their way. I do kind of agree that the AL feels like almost a 2-horse race, but at the same time, it's wide open if someone does get hot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not super confident in the Brewers. Maybe I'm just a little traumatized by the Diamondbacks, but I still kind of see it. But yeah, certainly the NL feels a bit more loaded right now as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, the Mets right now would be the top wild card team, which is pretty crazy. So yeah, moving on to the NFL. I mean, it's been a crazy few weeks. We'll quickly recap just a few of these games, but I mean, we want to kind of focus on week 4 and talk about everything then. Obviously, you've got a lot of these games up here. We'll talk about our two teams in our predictions for the week. Let's talk about this game though. Vikings Texans. I mean, I think everyone coming in would have predicted the Texans to take this one. And man, Sam Darnold. I mean, it's fun and interesting to see how these guys like Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, where they just need to get in the right situation, and these guys really do thrive. I mean, Darnold's been excellent. This Vikings defense has been sensational through 3 games. I mean, I think they've just got great coaching with O'Connell, with Brian Flores running the defense, and Sam Darnold. I mean, could this be the quarterback of the future? Are they going to have to extend this guy and ditch JJ? I mean, what do you think, Dev?
Yeah, the thought I honestly had, 3:30 or whatever, when I, looked up and saw this, the Vikings were going to win this game handily, was I think the QB1 in this draft class is going to be JJ McCarthy. I think, I mean, it's rare you would see a rookie who doesn't play get turned for even similar value that they were drafted at. I mean, just with the NFL, most of the time your value is gonna depreciate year after year. But this isn't a loaded quarterback class. He's still super young, and I mean, right now, I mean, you'd be a little bit crazy to not be considering extending Darnold. I mean, we've seen it happen the last 2 years. First of all, I mean, 2 years ago when Gino did it, it was maybe a bit of a fluke, you would think, or last year with Baker, but now, it just seems like it's a thing. The situation is so important nowadays, and a lot of times these guys don't get, the time, and you can't give them the time. I mean, look at a guy like Bryce Young. I mean, the Panthers kind of had to bench him, but
Yeah.
at the same time, purely in terms of these guys' development, sometimes you take 2 or 3 years as a backup. You go to another team or two who actually knows how to coach football, like Kyle Shanahan, or, for Gino had a good, QB coach in Dave Canales, who obviously helped with Baker as well. And, I was a little worried Baker would struggle without Canales, and, maybe it was a bit of a flash in the pan, but that hasn't happened either. So all this to say, I'm still confident in Darnold. I mean, this offense is loaded. They don't even have Addison or Hawkinson right now. You got a good set of tackles, and Brian Flores. I mean, man, he has this defense playing hard. I don't think they're any better than the 18th most talented defense or somewhere in that range, but they're playing incredibly right now. Their defense is still available in a lot of fantasy leagues, which I find interesting. But
They were defense number one right now.
yeah, but yeah, I mean, we'd certainly wonder, I guess, would Flores get another head coaching job? Obviously, there's a lot of, kind of baggage that comes with that. I think he sued the league and all that. So, maybe there will be some issues there. But I mean, he's been incredible coaching wise this year. He's just one of those guys. He gets, an Andrew Van Ginkel who, I mean, you wouldn't think.
Andrew Van Ginkel. I got to interrupt you. That is a podcast legend. I own a Miami Dolphins Andrew Van Ginkel jersey. I don't have it with me here, but that is, I think, back to the Mac Rommel days of Outside the Arena, where Andrew Van Ginkel was a special teams legend. I think he had like 3 weeks in a row one year for the Dolphins where he either like forced a fumble, blocked a punt, scored a touchdown. I think one of the years, I think the reason I got it was because I said that if he like either forced a fumble or scored a touchdown, I would buy a jersey because he'd been so on, and then he did, and then the rest is history. But sorry to interrupt. I just had to shout out the legend.
No, I knew he
the
was
Outside the Arena legend, Andrew.
Yeah,
Van
no, I knew
Ginkel.
he was your boy, and he fits the system perfectly. They like to, disguise some blitzes. He can drop in coverage. I think has 3 or 4 sacks. You have Patrick Jones, who's kind of a complete unknown, has I think 4 sacks. You have Blake Cashman, who's finally healthy. The last 2 years has been awesome. And then the big signing, Jonathan Grenard, they kind of swapped him with Daniil Hunter, for some less money to add some other pieces, and that's even been a good acquisition. And then the corners, they obviously had a horrible situation where someone they were planning on playing passed away. He signed Stephon Gilmore, who kind of off the scrap heap, and he's been awesome. So I mean, truly, this is incredible work by this coaching staff. I think Kevin O'Connell's an awesome coach, and I say all this to say I'm very high on the Vikings right now.
Yeah, I mean, how could you not? I mean, I think this is a team that last year really just got off to a slow start, and then Kirk went down, and then they really just weren't able to recover fully. And Jefferson was hurt. I mean, this year, I think a lot of people counted them out. They lost Daniil Hunter, like you said. Obviously, and Hawkinson's been hurt, but here they are. I mean, Sam Darnold has looked amazing, and I think really, I mean, Carolina, where we're going to get to, but I mean, I think Darnold went from a bad situation to the Jets to a really bad situation with the Panthers, and he never really had a true shot. It felt like with a good team with good coaching. Obviously he spent last year in San Francisco, which I can imagine really helped him because obviously studying under Shanahan there, and the system they got going is great. And then walking right into Kevin O'Connell's office, and I mean, he's been balling out, and Aaron Jones has been great at running back so far. I mean, I know he had the fumble, I think it was last week. Outside of that, though, I mean, he's a guy that, when the Packers let him go, you're kind of just like confused because he's still such a good running back as he's shown. I think last year, the last 4 games of the season, he ran for 100+ yards in all of them. Like he's still, even though he got cut, he's still got juice for sure. We've seen that so far this year. And I mean, Justin Jefferson, one of the best receivers in the game, has been balling out. And, Houston, one of those games for them where, you don't have Joe Mixon and the defense just didn't show up. CJ Stroud, as great as he was his rookie year, I will say there have been some throws this year or just some moments where, I think, he just needs to be a little more refined. I think he's kind of just made a few mistakes this year that, he maybe we're not accustomed to seeing from him. But I mean, I think this team will be fine. Obviously, Nico Collins has been huge so far this year. Stephon Diggs, 10 catches, kind of finding his role. And obviously, you got Tank Dell there still. So, not worried about the Texans. The Vikings, though, I agree. I think this is a team that, in the NFC that suddenly kind of seems wide open. Talking about the American League, the NFC, I think, is kind of that same way with San Francisco banged up and really struggling so far. So that was that game. I'm trying to see if there's any others that are really worth touching on. I mean, Ravens Cowboys was a good game. I think we can just talk about all these teams honestly in the predictions. So we'll move on to week 4 and start things off tomorrow night, or probably today when you're watching this. Cowboys at Giants, 1-2 teams. Malik Neighbors has been fantasy wide receiver number 1 so far. He's been special. Dallas obviously really struggling. That defense, losing Dan Quinn, seems to be affecting them. And offensively, I mean, it's kind of a situation where this team it feels like with losing pieces every year, and they've kind of been chipping away and losing some guys and have had to pay their star players like Dak and CD. And now it kind of feels like this team is just, feels like they might have missed their chance. I don't know, Dev. What are your thoughts on Dallas? I'll pick them to win this game. I mean, they kind of own the Giants these last few years. I think Daniel Jones, I will say, I get it. He's not a star, but I do think the guy's getting after week 1, when it felt like everyone was kind of raining down on him and just like bashing the guy. And it's like, I don't really know what these Giants fans were expecting this year, but also he's been fine so far. Like him and Neighbors seem to be developing a connection. Like I think Daniel Jones, not great, but I mean that he's had some really bad moments. I won't defend the guy fully, but I mean, I think the Giants fans has to ease up because at the end of the day, this is not a team that's going to be very good at the end of the day. Maybe they'll get to 5-6 wins, but it's not all Danny Dimes' fault, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But I'm picking Dallas in this game. I think big bounce back opportunity for them, and hopefully their offense can really get going because it feels like we haven't seen this offense clicking as it did at the end of last year.
Yeah, no, I mean, I will pick the Cowboys here too. Frankly, if they don't win this game, you're getting to how long does Mike McCarthy make it type of territory. And, I guess that was my logic. I picked the Bengals in my survival pool last week and they ended up losing. So that logic didn't really work out for me. But I really do believe that this is a must-win game for the Cowboys. Even if they could make the playoffs theoretically if they turn it around, I just don't know if they will turn it around if they can't win this game. I mean, the Ravens have really struggled to run the ball the first couple of weeks, and they completely punched the Cowboys in the mouth. I mean, this is a soft football team. There's no other way to put it. You draft Mozzie Smith in the first round last year to be your run stopping, defensive tackle. He sucks. That's a miss. I hate to say it, but he's just getting blown off the ball. You have, 97-year-old Linval Joseph playing a lot. I don't really know what's up with that. Even Micah Parsons is getting, run off the ball a little bit, never been this all-world run defender, but that's a little disappointing. And this linebacker core, I mean, oh my goodness. Eric Kendricks, hang him up, man. You have Demarion Overshone, who's made some nice plays, but he's like 218 pounds, and they just don't have the size. Every team that, goes to the Cowboys and says, we're going to hit you in the mouth and run the football and not let your secondary and pass rush, which is really just Micah Parsons at the end of the day, get after it, then, you're going to win. You're going to run the football down their throat. It makes me happy, but it is pretty upsetting football to watch sometimes because this is an incredibly talented team. But even offensively right now, it's like, you can't run the ball. Brandon Cooks has completely disappeared. Took Jalen Tolbert in the second round a couple of years ago. He hasn't done much. It's really CeeDee Lamb right now, and even the offensive line has taken a step back with letting Tyron Smith go. So I just don't know if this team is quite as talented as we thought. And I don't think they're very well coached. And I think, you saw in the Packers playoff game last year, like teams kind of just realized like, oh, let's just run the ball on this team. Like they can't match the physicality of the tough teams in the league. And that's just a major issue. I'm being very negative right now. I still think they have a great quarterback. I think they have a great receiver. Tyler Smith's awesome. Zach Martin's awesome. They have no reason to not be at least a good offense, and they can, figure some stuff out. Mike Zimmer's a good coordinator, but you just have a lot of issues right now with this team. So I wouldn't really project this team to be much better than 500.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how and if the Cowboys are able to turn it around. Moving along to the Sunday slate of things, and oh boy, Cincy, it is panic time for this team. Obviously, T. Higgins missed the first two games. Jamar had the whole contract drama. Joe Burrow returning from the injury, and this team has just not been able to get it done. Their defense just got destroyed by Washington. Joe Burrow on the offense played very well on Monday night, and then on the flip side, Carolina, a disaster. Obviously, I think, one, your thoughts on the game, who wins, but I think more importantly, like Carolina, like what are your thoughts? Is this it for Bryce Young in Carolina? Do you think he's played his last snap there?
Yeah, I do. Maybe he'll get in, end of the year if they try to give him another chance once, they're officially out of it. But I don't think he's on the team past this year. And frankly, I don't know what his path to, a redemption arc even is. I don't want to write a guy off, but he has a weaker arm than we all imagined. And we thought he was a great improviser who would make plays, in the vein of, Caleb Williams. And he's just not fast enough. Pass rushes are very athletic nowadays, and he can't really outrun guys, and he certainly can't outrun guys while looking down the field and making good throws. And the accuracy has completely abandoned him too. So it's just worse than the worst case scenario I could have imagined. He just looks way too small, which is interesting because you see a guy like Kyler Murray, killing it right now, or at least did the first 2 weeks. And it just, Bryce Young just can't really hang physically. And I don't really know what the path to figuring that out is. And obviously the ownership here is a mess. The team sucked last year and the team isn't great this year, but you saw it last week. This team isn't incompetent offensively. Like they have playmakers, the Raiders defense isn't great, but I think Andy Dalton had like 300 yards and 3 touchdowns on awesome efficiency.
He balled out.
Yeah, he balled out. And, obviously you don't want to take too much out of one game, but I think they allowed, some of the least pressures of any team in any game this year. So, this offensive line that they paid big money to certainly, at least holding up against the Raiders pass rush. It's very talented. So, I'm rooting for Bryce. I have nothing against the guy, but I just don't see it working out at this point. Yeah, I think they can win this game, to be quite honest with you. I think the Bengals are a disaster as well. The first 2 weeks, again, touched on it, no T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, hadn't really practiced, and that might still be playing some type of effect on Joe Burrow getting back. But like last week, you have, the Commanders, a very, very beatable defense, and the offense did play pretty well. And I guess this offense will turn around. But what I'm really concerned about is this defense. And all credit due to Jane Daniels. We'll talk about that more in a little bit. He played absolutely incredibly. But that is kind of a joke to give up, that many points. Your defense, your offense is able to make it a 1-possession game early in the fourth quarter, and you don't get the ball back until the game is over, basically. It's just bad. Lou Anarumo has been awesome before, and it just, you lose Jesse Bates, you lose a Chidobe Awuzie, and for whatever reason, it just all falls apart. They can't tackle, which has been a big staple of, their defense. They always tackled well. So I just don't know what the path is to them turning it around. I never thought Zach Taylor was a good coach, to be quite honest with you. And I think that's kind of rearing its head right now, even on the offensive side. You might even be missing Brian Callahan a little bit as well. So
Yeah.
I think this team, certainly, in a year or two can figure some things out. But as of this year, I don't know how much you can turn it around. And they've already dug themselves too deep of a hole in the AFC to, I think, even be a serious playoff team if they do turn it around. So I will go with the Bengals here. I think this will be a high scoring game. I think these are two really porous defenses. Although the Panthers defense definitely played pretty hard last week. I'll trust the Bengals to win this one, but I certainly don't see them as a good team at all right now.
Yeah, I mean, they got to turn it around. I think they'll win this week. I mean, I still think, I think I get Andy Dalton against his former team. That's a cool storyline, but I don't think Carolina's as good as they played last week, and I think Vegas is just not very good, frankly, and played like that. But I think Cincy is a team that if they lose this week, like the season's basically over. I mean, it is over. I guess you never want to say never, but with the win this week, it's gonna they're gonna have to play really good football the rest of the way, but the path is at least there. And you know, for me, Carolina is the real one of the stories of the NFL right now. I mean, this is a team that has just completely mishandled everything, it feels like, for 5, 6 years now. I mean, ever since Cam Newton really left, it just never has worked. You know, I think, Dave Canales is going to be a fine coach. Like you see it, like he has an offense that can work in the NFL and can produce points. Deontay Johnson looked solid with the real quarterback, but that's the problem. The quarterback position, like they really whiffed on Bryce Young, and whether that's player development, whether that is just Bryce Young just not having the traits to be an NFL quarterback, like he kind of said. But this is a guy who they gave up a ton to acquire. I mean, they gave up one of their best players in DJ Moore, and a heck of a lot of first round picks, and to be completely moving on from him from after like 20 games. I mean, that is just, I understand why. I mean, the play on the field has been atrocious. Like you see it, and then you see what Andy Dalton can do, and it's just like, well, what does that say about Bryce Young? If Andy Dalton goes in there and their offense still sucked, well, then maybe you think Bryce Young's got a shot. And I think Bryce Young could still be a decent quarterback, like you said, with these guys we've seen the last few years, Darnold, Baker, two of them were Panthers, and Geno Smith. Sometimes it takes some guys, a little bit more time, 4 or 5 years, to really find their footing. And I hope that happens with Bryce Young. I wish him well. But I mean, just a disaster of a situation. The fact that this team traded away Brian Burns, Christian McCaffrey, DJ Moore, all in their prime, and gave away more first round picks than they received is just some of the biggest incompetence I think you could ever see. So Carolina, I mean, they are screwed as a franchise because frankly, there's not really any talent on this team. And they tried to restart their rebuild with Bryce Young, and they whiffed. So that is what it is. Since he's going to win this game, in my opinion. Moving along to a fun NFC South. I mean, we got a division here, Dev. Saints, Falcons. Falcons 1-2, but all three really close games so far. I think this offense is kind of getting a little bit better each week. I think we're seeing Kirk get more comfortable with throwing to Drake London. Bijan, it feels like we really haven't seen him get going. I think like people maybe have expected. And on the flip side, the Saints, I mean, obviously a tough week last week to the Eagles, a game that they probably should have won. I mean, really just blowing it on that last drive, allowing that pass to Dallas Goedert. But those first 2 weeks, they were the best offense in football. Derek Carr's been playing really well. That said, I am going to pick the Falcons here. I think Atlanta, still a really good team. I think they've got the best safety room in the NFL with Jesse Bates and Justin Simmons. I think this is a game for them at home to kind of show off. I think this is a big Bijan game. Personally, I think they really need to get him the ball a little bit more, get him going. Obviously on the flip side of the ball, you got Alvin Kamara, who's been great for the Saints. But I do think, a little regression is headed for New Orleans, but I also think that this team is better than we thought going into the season. I think, Derek Carr, obviously not a high-end quarterback in the NFL, but the guy is still talented enough to win you football games. And they've got a much better scheme in place, it feels like, under Clint Kubiak. Got it. Falcons, though, I think win this one at home. I just think they get it done, and I think we'll start to kind of see Kirk Cousins trust. It feels like we've started to see him start trusting himself a little bit more and more each week, which is only a good thing.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, obviously with Kirk, the coming off the Achilles, not the most fleet of foot guy as it was to begin. You worry there, even the first game of the year, it didn't even seem like they could run, stretch handoffs out of the single back formation, which is obviously a big part of this offense because he couldn't really get there in time. And that has seemed to figure itself out. Obviously, it doesn't, you're not going to get to some point where he's scrambling or whatever, but he needs to be able to move and have footwork and take a step and whatever. And, beyond that, I do trust Kirk to be a good quarterback. I don't think he's elite, but I think he can certainly get the job done. I think there's a good enough offensive line. I think it comes down to the playmakers in a lot of ways that determines this upside. I mean, I've been on the Kyle Pitts train for so long. I'm, slowly evacuating and jumping off and, starting to question all my college evaluations in some ways. But certainly had some talent, made a big play against the Chiefs. And then was it him who had the interference that wasn't called?
Yeah.
I think it was, they're getting Ray McLeod the ball way too much. I don't know what's up with that. But Drake London, good player. I just don't know if this is a good weaponry, good set of weapons, which obviously you want with a Kirk Cousins. I mean, you want with anyone, but for this offense to be really, really good, you'd imagine the weapons would have to be pretty good, which I don't know if they're quite there. The defense has played well, like you said, good safeties. AJ Terrell is a really good player. Raheem Morris has him playing tough. Matthew Judon, good addition off the edge. But yeah, I think the story here, at least early in the season has been the Saints, of these two teams, Kamara, a resurgence, Derek Carr, doing an awesome job of playing within himself. And like you said, Quinn Kubiak just made a world of difference. It seems like basically every team, fan base hates their offensive coordinator, but it seems like the Saints fans were right here. Just a very uninnovative, old school, pro style system that just doesn't really work anymore with, that level of talent. And now it's like, you've got Rashid Shaheed, who's an awesome, versatile piece. Chris Olave, kind of functions like Ayuk in this offense, which is a piece that they need. Taysom Hill, I mean, it's just insane to me. He's still a playmaker.
Feels like we've been talking about him for like almost 10 years now.
It's yeah. And frankly, I mean, this is a once, in 30 years type player. I mean, there aren't many guys in the NFL. Like he can legitimately get carries out of the backfield. He's won games as a starter. Is he a good backup? No, but is he the worst backup in the league? Probably not. They'll play him in the slot. They'll play him at tight end. He can block. He plays on special teams. I mean, this is truly a rare player. He's like 34 and still runs like amazingly. I mean, he's just an interesting piece here. And they've just seemed to maximize what they have. They limit Derek Carr's, true dropbacks. This offensive line cannot pass protect. That's, I think this is the type of team that you go down 21-7 in the third quarter. I just think it's over. Derek Carr really struggles with pressure. They've done a great job of limiting that. But you get this team into true dropbacks. I mean, eventually you're going to see some pressure. We saw it, Jalen Carter completely, wrecked the game last week. And, obviously credit to him, but part of that is just this team is not equipped to handle great pass rushers. That being said, I will go with the Saints here. The defense is playing well. Dennis Allen's a good defensive coach. And yeah, like you said, we were wrong on this team. I more so myself. I mean, to be honest, if you asked me the least likely team to like be a good, solid team that, is interesting and whatever, I might have said the Saints, to be quite honest with you. I mean, Derek Carr, like I said, I don't think this line is very good, and that really scared me, but they've done basically a perfect job coaching wise. And I will trust this team to pick up another win here.
Yeah, should be a good game for sure. Oh boy. I mean, I'm picking the Texans here. I'm not gonna kind of already talked about them, but Jacksonville, I don't know what this team does. Like, I mean, I just think the past few off seasons, the decisions have just been all over the place. I mean, letting Calvin Ridley walk, bringing in Gabe Davis doesn't really do much. Trevor, he's looked really bad. Like, there's no way to sugarcoat it. He's been really bad. They just gave him, one of the highest paying deals in the NFL. And, I think part of it with him is, the thought that this guy is a generational talent coming out of college. I think that's kind of still in your mind or your mind somewhat when you're watching this guy. It's like, no, he's got to turn it around. Like he has to. Like he's a good player. And like at this point, I just don't know with him. Like it's just like he doesn't have the worst weapons in the NFL. They're not great, and I don't think the front office has helped him by any means with some of the decisions last few years. But I don't know. This team is not good. Their defense is not good. I mean, outside of Josh Allen on the D line, there's not really much talent on it, in my opinion. And the offense is mediocre. And I don't know what this team does because they're just kind of in a spot where I feel like they just don't have a lot of talent at these skill positions. And, now with Trevor on a monster deal, it's going to be a lot harder and harder to acquire that through free agency. So you got to hit on your draft picks. And Brian Thomas has looked solid so far. I think they need to do a better job of getting him the ball, but I'm picking Houston here. I just think Houston's a much better team. And I think that CJ Stroud should be able to pick apart this Jacksonville defense.
Yeah. I texted you, around Monday or Tuesday, I'm done evaluating quarterbacks, and I'm joking because I'm a weirdo and I will keep watching, but I'm not going to have any strong expectations for anyone anymore. I mean, you can't tell me. I mean, I honestly thought Trevor Lawrence would have been like the 18th best quarterback, his last year in college in the NFL. I really did. And it just goes to show, I mean, obviously you had the first year with one of the most disastrous situations of all time with Urban Meyer. And it looked like he was turning a corner, and it was Urban Meyer, and Doug Peterson had reinvented himself. Really up until about the halfway mark of last year. Wasn't perfect, but they'd certainly been trending in the right direction, and certainly had some things going for them. But since then, it's been really reminiscent of what I saw the last year, of Doug Peterson with the Eagles. And frankly, I've seen a lot of what I saw with Carson Wentz with Trevor Lawrence. He's just abandoned his footwork. The mechanics are off. He's spraying throws. He's not making right decisions. And on top of that, and it pains me to say this, Doug Peterson is just, I don't know what he's doing. To be quite honest, they can't run the ball. The offensive line is horrible. The receivers are okay, I guess, but they're not getting the ball to them enough. Like you said, I really think this team's hope is to get the ball to Christian Kirk and Brian Thomas quite a lot. But you don't really trust your quarterback right now. So frankly, I think this team season's over. I think, you have to move into fire Doug Peterson. You cannot let Trent Baalke be this team's GM for another year. It's just a joke at a certain point that, there's just no one good on this defense. You hit on a Josh Allen, you hit, I don't even know who else. I guess Christian Kirk has worked out. I like Brian Thomas. It's too early to make a decision, on how good of a pick that was. I'm certainly not have anything against it, but this defense just sucks. Tyson Campbell's their best corner. He's hurt. But frankly, I don't know how much that matters here. They're running like the most man coverage in the league by 10 or 15%. I don't know what that thinking is. I don't really know what they're doing. I think Peterson's got to get fired. I think you got to try to figure some things out with Lawrence and just salvage this contract. Like you said, you can't get out of it. I still trust the talent. He's still young enough to where, I just think you have to give it at least one more year with a new coach, but I'm not even confident in that. And this was my fear going into the year, is that this roster was never super talented to begin with. And Peterson's magic does seem to sort of wear off after a couple of years for whatever reason. And, it's, you're like you said, the Lawrence contract hasn't even kicked in. So in some ways, this is only getting worse. This is a disaster. Truly a disaster. Yeah, I'll go with the Texans, obviously.
Yeah. Broncos, Jets. I think both of us will be picking the Jets here. Kind of what I expected with this team. Like week one, I said it. I didn't think they were going to win in San Fran. I think that was a nightmare week one matchup for them on the road in San Fran, who's got a great fan base. Obviously San Fran's since gotten pretty banged up, but really good team. And the Jets, the only real concern I have is not with the offense. I think the offenses look great. The offensive line's held up. Braylon Allen's been a nice piece to emerge. Allen Lazard's playing better. It's the pass rush with Jermaine Johnson going out for the year. Will McDonald has stepped up. You've obviously still got Quentin Williams there, and they really need to figure out a way to get Hassan Reddick in the building because it would be a huge, addition. And, this pass rush, quite frankly, probably isn't good enough, for this team to seriously make a run without Hassan Reddick. The rest of the defense, some guys have been banged up, DJ Reed, CJ Mosley. So you got to hope it rounds into form later in the year. But kind of what I expected from the Jets so far. I think Aaron Rodgers last game, you started seeing him moving around a lot more, starting to play, like we know it. I think him and Garrett Wilson's connection, can get a little stronger. I think they've struggled to get on the same page so far. So once that clicks, I mean, I think this Jets offense will really start to take off, and it's been fun to watch. And I mean, they manhandled New England last week. So I think New York takes care of business against Denver with ease here.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed with everything you said. Sauce had a, really his first like bad game ever in week 2. I'm not worried about that. Not even a bad game, just got beat once or twice.
And that's the crazy touchdown where the ball just like magically found Calvin Ridley.
I mean, yeah, that was incredible. But yeah, I'm pretty confident in this defense. I think CJ Mosley will either be back this week or soon. Obviously got to get Reddick. I'm not even going into that. I don't know what we're doing, man. I'm all for players getting their money. He's losing money right now and not playing football. So that's just really frustrating as just an outsider, even as someone who, whose team traded away Reddick. I have no interest in watching this happen. I don't know what we're doing. And then, yeah, I mean, with the offense, it's going to take some time. I think it's good that this offense kind of replicates a lot of, what Green Bay looked like those last couple of years. Braylon Allen has been awesome. The offensive line has been good, and Rodgers has gotten better each week. And to be honest, after week 2, I was like, okay, this is who Rodgers is now. He can't move. He's still smart. He still makes good throws. Maybe not quite as accurate as he used to be, but still a good quarterback. But frankly, he was moving around. And again, it's not about, running for first downs and whatever. It's just about improvising, getting the extra second. And he made some absolutely gorgeous throws. One to Garrett Wilson on the touchdown. I think everyone's been talking about that. So yeah, I'm very confident in this Jets team. And I think a lot of, what we thought was the best case scenario for this team early in the year has, is looking like that might come to fruition. Quickly on the Broncos, I will take the Jets here if I didn't say that. Really disastrous first week or two, turn some things around. I will say in week 2, the decision to kick it deep with under 2 minutes and 1 timeout is fireable. I mean, when they traded for Sean Payton, I was like, okay, here, he's a really good coach. He's a good offensive mind. He seems to have really turned into this super, unaggressive, uninnovative, kind of check down focused offense. I just don't like it. I know they don't have this vertical passing game and whatever, but I just think he's stuck in, late stage Drew Brees in his head. And
I think that's kind of what Bo Nix is at this point.
I guess that's also possible.
He's got the deep ball on him a little bit, though, I guess.
Yeah,
no one to throw it to currently.
that is an issue. Certainly the talent here is lacking, but I just think I've been a little disappointed by the Sean Payton era here. But they made some steps last week, and the defense is pretty solid here.
Yeah, for sure. Next 3 games, let's do a little speed run here for these 3 games, 1 minute each. Vikings, Packers. We already talked about this game. Packers, Jordan Love maybe will play this game, but I'm going to pick Minnesota either way. I think just a team that's really hot right now. And I think Green Bay, has played really well with Malik Willis, 2-0, and they've run the ball really well. Josh Jacobs has been pretty efficient for them. Emmanuel Wilson had a nice touchdown last week. But I'm going to ride with the hot hand and go with Minnesota here. I think Love should, this team's 2-1. I think Love should take another week. You haven't lost with Willis, so I don't think there's any reason to rush it and risk re-injury with your franchise quarterback who you just extended. So I will take the Vikings though, and mainly because I just think their defense has been so good. And I think if it is Willis, that Brian Flores will be able to kind of confuse him like we haven't seen, Tennessee and whoever the team was beforehand, Indianapolis. Yeah. I think a lot more talent on that Minnesota defense and a really good scheme as we've seen these first 3 weeks.
Yeah, certainly I agree with everything you said. I will go with the Packers. I do expect Jordan Love to play, even if, like you said, that's maybe a little bit risky here. Big game in the division, obviously, even for early year here. I just think, LaFleur's done an awesome job, and I think the one potential weakness of this Vikings defense would be the run game. So I think that would be the big thing here is if the Packers can really run the ball well, I would expect them to win this game at home. But I think this is a good game between really two contenders in the NFC.
Definitely. Moving along to the Steelers and Colts. And how about Justin Fields 3-0 as a starter? I mean, kind of a freak thing where Russ just tweaks his hamstring and then Justin Fields is the guy. And now, I mean, this, in my opinion, is what should have happened all along. I never understood why they were starting Russell over Justin Fields. Russ, we know what he is at this point. He's past his prime. Justin Fields, there's at least that hope that, potential with him that feels like we haven't seen unlocked. And he's played really well so far. I mean, I think if Pittsburgh, and it did extend him and they bulked up the O-line, maybe got him another weapon. I mean, I think this offense could be really good. And I will pick them here. I just think this defense is too good. I think Anthony Richardson, he's really struggled the last 2 weeks. And this is the thing with him that, we saw in college. It's just the guy completes 50% of the passes, and that's what you're going to get. He makes really cool throws and has some great moments, but he has struggled as a passer. They did win last week. Jonathan Taylor really led them to victory in that one. Slow start to the year for Michael Pittman. They need to do better getting him involved, but I think Pittsburgh's defense is by far and away the best unit on the field in this one, and I think it'll just be too much for the young quarterback to handle, and I think Justin Fields kind of manages his way to victory here.
Yeah. I will say this quickly on Fields. Certainly been better. We're still not going to see the, whips his head around, goes through 3 different progressions and makes a beautiful lofted, he can make those throws, but I don't think he's ever going to be this, elite,
Yeah.
Joe Burrow type of guy or even, Mahomes or Allen. I just don't think that's it, but he's done a good job. He's getting rid of the ball quickly. He's trusting his playmakers, and it's never been that he's particularly inaccurate. He just holds on to the ball too long and, it doesn't read defenses super well. I will say this, I don't know how much more playmakers does for him. I just
True.
think in a weird way, you really need to run the ball with him and let him just make these easy decisions. Obviously, it would be better, but I don't know if he can support, again, like 2 awesome receivers or anything like that. Obviously you don't say no to it. I'm just saying I don't know exactly if this is a dynamic passing game if you drop, say AJ Brown in here. I just don't know if that's necessarily the case. But certainly he's done a good job. I will go with the Colts here. Very very up and down and mostly down start from Richardson. He's basically a rookie. He's always been a project and whatever. Not that you're writing him off at all, but I will give him some time, but certainly hasn't been good right now. I just think this is a classic. The Steelers lose a game that you're like, oh, I thought they win the easy games. And, they kind of just do this where they play to the level of their opponent. In Indy, I just have a gut feeling the Colts win this game. I do think the Steelers are a better team.
Yeah, I can totally see that happening. This one, Rams, Bears. Caleb, he's just taking a beating behind this O-line. I mean, that is kind of the story. I think, Caleb obviously has had some rough throws. He hasn't been amazing. Maybe this offense hasn't taken off the way I thought or Bears fans thought it would. But I think the O-line is the primary problem. This defense has been sensational so far to start the season, and I will pick the Bears in this one. The Rams looked really good last week. Cooper Kupp's not going to be there this one, and to me, this is just one of those games where this Bears defense plays really hard. I think they just can kind of get the win, and I think at home, this is a week for Caleb Williams to really thrive against a Rams defense that, I don't think is particularly sensational. They can get some stops, but this isn't the Rams defense it was a few years ago when they had Aaron Donald and Von Miller and Jalen Ramsey. So this defense definitely not the hardest test, and I think Caleb Williams and the Bears do get this one done. And a better performance last week from Caleb. It was good to see Rome Odunze really go off. And, I think, with Keenan Allen's injuries, they just got to find the way to get the ball to Odunze because he's the guy that Caleb's going to be with for the entirety of that contract. So may as well make him as key a part of the offense, as big a part of the offense as you can right away, especially from what we saw last week in Indy.
Yeah. So quickly on the Bears. Yeah. Obviously the O-line is the primary issue here. Well, I disagree, actually. I think Shane Waldron's the primary issue here. I just don't like what he's done at all. Too many screens. I will say there's a big epidemic right now of teams trying to play, the leverage game of, oh, we can get a numbers advantage if we throw a quick out here or whatever. And it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Defenses are too smart. They're too athletic. They're all over it. And it just leads to a lot of 2-yard passes and stuff like that. And I think Shane Walder might be a big culprit of this, as anyone. But yeah, the offensive line has been bad as well. And I'm very much not worried about Caleb Williams. I think the main things have been missing some throws, which I guess if there's any concern, it would be that. I'm not super concerned about the accuracy overall. And even if, there's still a path to him being an awesome quarterback if he's not, the most number one pinpoint accurate quarterback in the league. And I just think the other issue is he's never been less athletic than any defensive lineman. He's never not had all day to throw. And I'm not saying, he's like pampered or anything like that. I'm just saying he's never had a situation where he's dealing with
He's
this.
under attack, within a second of getting the ball.
No, I mean, absolutely. So, you've seen it. You saw it sometimes against the Texans where he's trying to evade, trying to make a play. He's not necessarily doing anything stupid. He's just not used to the fact that he's not just going to outrun every defensive lineman. And I would be surprised if he doesn't learn that, even by midway through this year. Certainly you see the flashes, you've seen the great throws, you've seen the improvisation. I'm not worried about Caleb Williams, to be honest. I will go with the Rams here. They're massively banged up. They kind of went all in on this, injury prone core of really talented players, but kind of biting them a little bit, nothing you can do. You took Puka in the 5th round, but he fell, or I don't even remember what round, but you took him day 3. Part of the reason he fell is because he couldn't stay healthy in college. And, that's the chance you take. You obviously would take Puka Nacua 10 times out of 10, but that is the risk you run. Same things happen with the offensive line. They're just banged up. So I trust McVay. I trust Stafford. They're going to do what they can, but this team is banged up. If they can get healthy, I do think they can make the playoffs, but I just think they win this game. I just think Stafford is operating at such a high level right now that although this Bears defense is awesome, I don't know if Stafford's going to, get baited into doing anything stupid. And I just don't think this Bears offense is quite very good right now, to be honest.
No, all very fair. Eagles Bucks, rematch of the wild card from last year. Both these teams 2-1. I will say, this Eagles team, Jalen Hurts has been struggling. Far too many turnovers, in my opinion, so far from him. But Saquon Barkley, I mean, without him, where would this Eagles team be right now? Potentially 0-3. I mean, it would. He's been so good for them and really a talent. Obviously, AJ Brown, I think likely out again for this one. Devonta Smith dealing with the concussion, so maybe
As is Lane Johnson.
As is CJ Gardner-Johnson.
Lane Johnson.
Lane Johnson, right. Yeah. So maybe those guys could clear protocol. It feels like with the new protocol, that's a little tougher to do within 1 week. So for that reason, I will go Tampa Bay. I think they just kind of catch the Eagles at a good week at home. If this game was at Philly, I'd probably pick the Eagles, but I think Tampa Bay's offense has been really good. They had a down week last week. But Chris Godwin's had a great season so far. Mike Evans, I think, due for a big game against this Philly secondary. That played better last week. They had some down moments, but last week was definitely a better performance for this defense. Pass rush still some work, and Bryce Huff, I mean, it's been a slow start for him, that's for sure.
Yeah. I would say these are two of the teams, at least of the quality teams that I really could see going either way right now. I'm starting to get a sense of who I think a lot of the better teams are in the league, but with the Bucks, they looked awesome the first 2 weeks. And frankly, I don't know what the hell happened last week. I mean, Baker looked like he'd even taken a step up from how he'd been playing at the end of last year. The first 2 weeks, he juked Malcolm Rodriguez out of his shoes, which you never even see in the NFL, let alone from a quarterback. So I mean, I was obviously I'm rooting for Baker. I think everyone for the most part roots for Baker. And I certainly believe in him still. But last week was a bit concerning and, a bit more of what I probably would have expected going into the year. So it's just going to be a question of who exactly this Bucks team is. Chris Godwin's been awesome to start. And then, yeah, got a lot to say about the Eagles. I think ultimately this is the evaluation I had of this team going into the year was it all comes down to coaching and quarterback. I think the coordinators have been awesome. And I think Nick Sirianni is one of the worst coaches in the league. I just don't know exactly what he does here. The decisions have been horrible. There's been, rifts with Jalen Hurts already. That was a big rumor in the offseason. So, is he a motivator? Is he a decision maker? I don't know if he's good at anything. I won't even go into some of the decisions made last week besides, trying to go for it on 4th and 1 with 14 seconds left, where you're going to have maybe one shot to the end zone without your best receiver. I mean, honestly, I think those are the types of plays where you're more likely to throw a pick or take a sack in bounds than score a touchdown. It's just really hard to score on those. I don't know what the thinking is there whatsoever. That, in a 3-0 ball game. And to be honest, there's a part of me as an Eagles fan that's just like, this team's never going to win a Super Bowl with Sirianni as the head coach. Like, you got to, start thinking about making a move, at least at some point in the season. But this team has the talent. We've said it about Saquon all the time. What if he had an offensive line? Here you go. He's probably the best or second best running back in the league. Dallas Goedert has a career day last week. Kellen Moore is drawing up things that Brian Johnson never even could have possibly imagined. This is an offense that's more multiple. It still has that kind of spread roots that, Shane Steichen built. But Kellen Moore, last week with AJ Brown out and some more wide receiver injuries, said, let's run a lot of, 2-3 tight end sets. And that worked well. So I trust Kellen Moore to do what he can. The defense played absolutely incredibly against the Saints. Jalen Carter, I think, is legit. Seeing Fletcher Cox retire sucked. And now it's awesome feeling like, we have someone else who could be of that level. I mean, I really think he's that good. Zach Bond has been excellent at linebacker. Nakobe Dean has been solid. So that issue has been solved. I think you still have some question marks in the secondary to work out. I don't think Avonte Maddox should be playing, to be quite honest. He's been a great Eagle, not a great Eagle. He's done, really good things for the Eagles for a long time. I just don't think he can move quite like he used to, and he's small as it is. So I think you got to go to DeJean in the slot. Darius Slay's not very good anymore. That's just what it
Him
is.
getting
I think
burnt and then like congratulate. That clip is like so funny where he's like, "Good route, man."
I think his time is starting to run out in Philly is my sense here. A bit frustrating, but Quinyon Mitchell has been awesome. So I think ultimately this team's going in the right direction talent-wise, but like you said, you got to clean up the turnovers if you're Jalen Hurts. I mean, it's just, we talk about it with Purdy and how he's, a system quarterback and whatever, but ultimately you very rarely see him hold the team back. And frankly, we've seen that from Jalen Hurts all 3 weeks so far. We played better the Falcons game. Obviously, some frustrating things there. Eagles should have won that game, not necessarily on Hurts, but it's just not been what you like to see. I think most people would have had him as a top, 8 quarterback after the Super Bowl appearance. And frankly, right now, I don't even know if I'd have him, in the top 12. I don't think I would. Probably closer in that 15 range with, guys like Jared Goff and Purdy and Geno Smith. Like, I've just started to lose some trust in him. He's never been good without AJ Brown. And that's the concern here. It's that and the coaching. If those two things figure itself out, if Hurts just plays cleaner football, gets, to 90% of how he played in 2022, and Nick Sirianni cleans up the decision making, I mean, this team can win a Super Bowl, but as of right now, it feels pretty far-fetched. So this team could go in a lot of different directions. You have the bye week next week. I kind of expect at least 2 of Lane Johnson, Devontae Smith, and AJ Brown to be out. Just feels like a week where it's just going to be really tough. I don't see the point in rushing these guys back just to go on a bye. I will take the Bucks here. I know it, you never want to go to 2-2, but it just kind of is. You're not screwed if you do, and it might be the best case just to kind of rest your guys and say, let's live for another week.
Yeah, no, definitely makes sense there. These next few games, let's fly through. Patriots, 49ers. I'm picking the Niners. They're banged up, but I mean, New England at this point after last week, I mean, they had their kind of fluky week 1 win. And, now I think we're going to start to see how bad this Patriots team really is. The O-line, really, really bad. So I'm picking San Francisco here.
Me too. Just becomes a thing of like, when do we get the Drake May talk, basically?
Yep. Next one, Commanders at Cardinals. This one a little more interesting. Obviously, Jaden Daniels, I mean, he has been sensational so far. Cardinals rookie Marvin Harrison also has been amazing. I will pick Arizona, though. Washington's been really good. I just think Arizona, tough week last week, but I think this is a more favorable matchup for them. This Washington defense isn't great. We saw the Bengals do very well last week, and I can just very easily see Kyler Murray having a great day, Marvin Harrison playing well. So I'm going to pick Arizona here at home, but Washington, I mean, Jaden Daniels, I think, you have to say right now that this guy looks like he's going to be by far and away the best quarterback in this draft class. He's just seemingly got all the tools, and I mean, his ability to escape the pocket is just tremendous. And, as his connection with Terry McLaurin only builds and builds, you really feel like this offense could continue to take off. And, this team could be fighting for 8, 9 wins, maybe even a playoff spot. So really encouraging start if you're a Washington fan, but I will pick Arizona in this one.
Yeah, I think the parallels between these two teams are interesting. You have Terry McLaurin, who's dealt with, shitty quarterback play for so long, and you have Kyler Murray, who, I mean, he's had good receivers, but I don't think he's ever had a good situation overall. I think, to kind of ironic, but I think Cliff Kingsbury held him back in a lot of ways. I like a lot of what Cliff Kingsbury is doing this year. Jaden Daniels, I mean, wow. I was certainly maybe a bit lower on him than consensus. I still thought he could be a good quarterback. My biggest issue was, with the hits, and that certainly is a concern still. But my other thing was I didn't know if he was whip his head around from read 1 to 2 to 3, like we're talking about with Fields super fast. And, 3 games into his career, he's already doing it. He's established a connection with Terry McLaurin. This team isn't very good, and he's, making chicken salad out of chicken shit, I think is the expression that, he's done a good job. They haven't punted in 2 weeks. I know it was a lot of field goals against the
First time since
Giants.
what, 1940 or 1960? Like,
Yeah,
that is a
something like
crazy
that.
stat.
So all credit due. And yeah, I think both these teams are similar. They're feisty, good quarterback play, going in the right direction in the future. Defenses aren't very good, and they project probably around 500 as a scrappy, wild card team. I'll pick the Cardinals at home. I think, maybe people are, just a little bit higher on the Commanders after last week primetime game against a team that people probably still think is better than they actually are, especially defensively. But yeah, I mean, certainly good signs for both these teams. Good vibes, all that, and I will go with the Cardinals here.
Yeah. Moving along. How many more games we got? We got 5 more games. Chiefs, Chargers. I'm picking the Chiefs. I mean, Chargers, good for first 2 weeks. Herbert obviously still dealing with that ankle injury. J.K. Dobbins has been a cool story. Finally getting him back and healthy has been awesome to see. In Kansas City, I mean, I know there's been some kind of late calls in seemingly all of these games that have been that have got Twitter up in arms. Obviously, it happens. I know there were some calls that I think Chiefs fans were saying that they didn't get as well. I don't know. Obviously that no call was pretty bad, but I mean, you're going to get that. Obviously it's kind of just magnified with Kansas City at this point, but I'm going to take them. I mean, it feels like they always kind of win these games in LA. Travis Kelce really slow start to the season. I mean, you got to wonder if he's just slowed down as a player at this point, or what's going on. I mean, it's been kind of weird, to be honest, because he, even in the playoffs last year, was still a really solid piece. And I mean, through 3 weeks, he's been a ghost. It's pretty weird.
Yeah. You wonder, maybe they're just saying, just stay healthy for the playoffs and then go to you. He's 35. He's, we talked about he's dating, one of the most famous people in the world. So certainly I would, be caring a little bit less about football at that point. He's kind of accomplished everything. He's world famous, even besides Taylor Swift. He and Kelce.
A lot richer now than he was a few years ago.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So, and the podcast, I think he's making similar money off the podcast as he is on his contract. So, I just say that all to say I don't think, we're super far from Kelce's retirement. But I do think, come playoff time, come the time that matters, I still think he's going to be awesome like he was last year. Rashee Rice, another pick, another draft prospect I was just completely dead wrong about. Kind of used him a lot like Debo last year, and he's awesome in that role. And now they're saying sometimes to tell him to go win on the outside, which he really didn't do much at SMU, and he's doing that now. So I really, trust the Chiefs. Obviously, I'm taking the Chiefs here. I don't know what the hell the Chargers were thinking playing Herbert last week. It's a high ankle sprain. This isn't a team that's contending right now. They're banged up. I think both Slater and Alt are going to miss this game. This kind of feels like a disaster matchup for them. I'm going with the Chiefs.
Yeah, definitely feels that way. Browns at Raiders. I mean, oh baby, Deshaun, it's been rough. I mean, it feels like they can't really escape that contract, but at least we're starting to get to the point where I think you got to start talking about Jameis coming in and seeing what you got. Devontae Adams, man, come on over. I mean, I think we're getting after that week, I mean, I think you got to imagine a player like Devontae, especially after watching the receiver documentary and just seeing how passionate and how frustrated he really was last season. I mean, you got to imagine that after a loss like that, he if that keeps up, I think he's going to want out of there and seemingly want to the Jets. I will pick Cleveland here. I, I I- I'm surprised at how bad the defense has been so far. Deshaun has obviously not been great and clearly, is not going to be anything close to what he was in Houston at this point. I think we just have to accept the fact that he's not a good quarterback at this point. And I mean, considering his off the field stuff, it really doesn't make sense you really don't want him affiliated with your organization if he's not performing on the football field. Um, yeah, but I'll pick Cleveland here. I just think still, I think they're the better team. Wyatt Teller is out. I'm kind of talking myself into Vegas, but I'll pick Cleveland here. Just one of those weird weeks where they figure it out and look like a competent team again, makes Cleveland fans believe, and then Deshaun will throw 3 picks next week.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of negative things to say about both these teams. I won't really go in on the Raiders. I think we know who they are. I agree. Devontae Adams deserves better. The defensive line's good. They have some interesting pieces. I kind of don't really know where this team is going, to be honest. Brock Bowers has been awesome.
Yeah.
Again, don't really know where this team is going. And yeah, with the Browns,
They're gonna be making some business decisions this week. So
yeah. And yeah, I mean, with Deshaun, like he's just like I don't even know if he's a top 32 quarterback, man. I mean,
no, definitely not. Not
it's
the way he
bad.
played.
Yeah, certainly not playing like it. And like you said, I mean, I know you don't want to punt on this, but I almost think your best chance is he gets some type of legal trouble. I mean, it's just
100%.
it's just a disaster. I mean, you fully guaranteed a contract. I mean, I don't even know if the Chiefs would do that with Mahomes, and you did this with a guy who hadn't played football in a year and had some major legal issues. I would have expected him to play much better than this, but I just don't know what they were doing. And yeah, I mean, the defense got torched last week. That's bad. A lot of man coverage and Neighbors kind of just ate them up, but that's not an excuse. This defense should be dominating the Giants. And maybe, even that might be seeping in culture wise. I mean, kind of have a lame duck, checked out loser at quarterback right now. I'm not sure how much these guys are, really want to fight for their team. I think we're about a week away from you just have to throw Jameis in there. And I really think that can reinvigorate this team, to be honest. I think
100%.
Jameis is both better. And I know, everyone loves Jameis. They're going to play for this dude. Jameis is going to, he's going to give guys chances. You have Amari Cooper, you have Njoku coming back, hopefully. If Nick Chubb gets back and, Jameis is playing, as much as it sounds crazy, I don't think I can write this team off. But right now, it's just a disaster, and I'm going to go with the Raiders as much as I don't think they're very good either.
Yeah, I agree. I think Deshaun, it just doesn't seem like anyone in that locker room really has his back, and understandably so. This is the game of the week, in my opinion, here. Bills Ravens. I mean, hand up, I was wrong about Buffalo. I counted this team out. And boy, oh boy, I mean, Josh Allen has made me eat my words. I mean, he is something special. I mean, he's the second best quarterback in the NFL, hands down. I don't think it's a debate anymore with, I think you got Mahomes up here, Allen's right there, and then the rest of the pack is further down. I mean, James Cook has been a great piece this year for them. I've been surprised that they haven't really used, I thought Kincaid was kind of going to be the lead guy, and they've kind of just spread the ball around. I mean, Khalil Shakir had a nice game the other night. And this defense has played really well despite, losing a lot of guys these last few years. DeMar Hamlin that had his first career interception the other night. Baltimore, this is a big game for them. They need to win. They need to run the football well. And I will pick them to win this game. I was really impressed with what they did in Dallas. Obviously, that loss to Vegas was kind of just you don't want to say fluke, but like they just kind of collapsed at the end. Like they just ran out of gas. Justin Tucker, I mean,
What
he's
the
kind of
hell,
on
man?
watch. Yeah, I mean, this guy is I love Justin Tucker, but he's just really struggling right now. You wonder if some of that's mental at this point with all the struggles he's had from 50 plus yards the last few years. I don't know. But I think Baltimore gets it done. I think Derrick Henry has another big game. They've used Justice Hill well. Mark Andrews didn't really play much last game. I think that needs to change. They have to use him because I think he's their best pass catcher personally, but I guess I think differently the way they've been playing him. But really strong start for Buffalo. Baltimore needs to win this game, and I think they do it.
Yeah. So yeah, starting with Buffalo. Yeah, I mean, wow. It's in a weird way, seems like getting rid of a clear number one target has given Allen, the freedom to just throw to who's open and make the right play. He hasn't thrown the ball a ton. And we've seen, 2 or 3 game stretches in the past where he's super locked in and doesn't make any mistakes. But I mean, if he can somehow stay, in the 10 interception or lower range, I mean, you got to start, having a conversation of if he's in the range of quarterback one. And I think that's insane to say out loud, but if he's not turning the ball over, I mean, he is just a monster. He's built like a tight end. He runs, like a gazelle, and he has obviously an amazing arm, and he's not making mistakes right now. I mean, it is just incredible quarterback play we're seeing, especially with, how down the quarterback play is across the league. I think Shakir's a good player. I think, between Keon Coleman and Curtis Samuel and Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Matt Collins is an awesome blocker and a good role player. I think they can figure it out at receiver. I think, like you said, I do think Kincaid needs to step up for this team to be super, super awesome offensively. The offensive line has been great. Spencer Brown, went from one of the bigger weaknesses on this team to a mainstay. That, bookend tackles are really good. And James Cook has been awesome. So I'm confident this offense being, where it's been the last few years, where ultimately in the playoffs, they've ended up kind of losing close games a lot of times because of their defense and, one mistake here or there. And the defense, we've seen this story a lot before where they play excellently in the regular season. They're not super talented. And then, you face these really good teams and they struggle a little bit more. But, my inclination here is that this team's a little different. I mean, you have Greg Rousseau, haven't really had a true number one edge on this team. Ed Oliver holding things down. Sean McDermott, pumps out good linebackers like it's nothing. You have Terrell Bernard and Matt Milano hurt, and now, Dorian Williams and Dalen Spector, who, frankly, I didn't even know of, till a couple weeks ago playing well. And I mean, out of absolutely nowhere, you now have Von Miller playing well again, and he's not playing a ton, but get into a 3rd and 10, you have him and Rousseau on the field, and you trust McDermott to put the scheme in a right place. And like you said, DeMar Hamlin playing well. And I do think, the Jags suck. So, take everything of last week with, a little bit of a grain of salt, but they just blew out an NFL team. This is awesome. I guess, like I'm saying, I think the defense here is kind of the thing of this defense plays like this against, Chiefs, whoever else in the AFC. Maybe, I'd still take the Texans as a serious contender as of right now. If they can hold up well against these teams, I mean, and you get this level of play of Josh Allen, this is an awesome formula, even without a great playmaker, which is just awesome to see. It's rare in today's NFL. And yeah, I mean, I think we were both wrong about the Bills. Probably going into the year is a little bit higher on Josh Allen than you were, but certainly didn't expect this.
Definitely. Titans Dolphins. I mean, I don't really care about this game. I'll give Tennessee the first one of the season. Will Levis. It's been rough. He's probably not the guy, but I'll give them the win. Miami just looks lost without Tua.
Who is starting for Miami?
It might be Tyler Huntley. It might be Skylar Thompson. It might be Tim Boyle.
Tim Boyle?
Tyreek Hill. I mean, I don't think they really know.
Yeah. I will say this. We didn't touch on it. We didn't, record, Tua, you gotta retire, man. I know he's not gonna see this. I know, this doesn't go very far. But I mean, seriously, man, you've made $70 million. You have guaranteed money on this deal. I'm sure you can say to the Dolphins, give me 30 million. I'll retire. I'll call it a career. It's just not about the money. He can go have a great career in broadcasting. I mean, frankly, I'm not super high on Tua as a player, but it just doesn't matter. He can have the best career of all time, and it's not going to be worth it if, he doesn't get to raise a family and whatever else, he wants to do in life. And obviously this is, a deep thing and whatever, but, it's just not, football just doesn't matter this much. And I think someone in his life just needs to make that clear. I know it's his passion. I know he's been doing it his whole life and all that, but it just hurts because, every time he goes out there, he could take a hit and frankly not get up. It's sad. And Yeah, and the only thing sadder might be this game itself. I mean, Will Levis seems to be making, the memes every week.
It's
You
fun to
know,
watch, man. It's fun to watch.
Ryan Callahan calling him an idiot. I'll go with the Titans. I don't know. That game's gonna suck.
Yeah, and then last game, Seahawks Lions. I'll pick the Lions here. I think Seahawks 3-0, but I just don't think they are as good as that record shows. I mean, they've played Denver, they've played Miami without Tua, and then they played, was it New
Patriots.
England? I mean,
Yeah.
that is as cakewalk as you could get. So good for them for taking care of business because some teams in the NFL have not against poor teams. But I will take Detroit here. I think much better football team than Seattle.
I will take Detroit here, although I am pretty high on the Seahawks. I think Geno's played awesome. I think, seeing Shane Waldron go elsewhere has made me realize that in if anything, he was being held back.
Yeah.
And the defense has played awesome under Mike McDonald, who I obviously trust as a great defensive mind. I will take the Lions here, but I do think the Seahawks are a pretty serious team. Like you said, they haven't played anyone good, so this will be a big test. And certainly it could just be that they've played bad teams so far, but I am pretty high on the Seahawks, higher than I thought I would have been going into the year.
Yeah. Well, that will do it for week 4 predictions and this episode of Outside the Arena. Good to be back. We got MLB playoffs coming up. NFL keeps going. NBA starting soon enough. So great time as always. If you haven't already, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. And yeah, we'll see you next time on Outside the Arena.